Hey, Buddy Manning here, Noah Dalzell alongside, and I feel like we just watched a classic here at TD Garden. Game 2, Celtics win 109-100. Close this one out, lead for most of the night, but the Magic were right there throughout, and Jaylen Brown paced the offense with Jayson Tatum out. Had a Jayson Tatum-like game with 35-10. It was a 36. 10 and 5. He was awesome, played 41 minutes, answered my biggest question I had with him coming into this one, and he mostly looked like Jaylen.
Yeah, he looked great. I think that's probably the biggest story here. This was my favorite game to cover in a very long time, and probably up there with all time. And over the last 2 seasons, I felt like
the preseason bench game.
There were some good preseason games, okay, but I just thought the crowd was phenomenal. I know that's not like what we're here to. That's not what we're here to talk about necessarily, but there were so many moments, big moments. There was the fact that Peyton Pritchard just won 6th Man of the Year, and then he had some big moments in this game.
They gave him a big applause when
yeah,
he came in.
and they always do, but it was like extra today.
Yep.
The Kristaps Porzingis, like blood, and just the fact that that's been recreated now multiple times in a span of a few weeks, that was like a huge crowd booster. And then I think just everybody recognized that Jayson Tatum was out and that other guys had to step up. And what normally would have been like you kind of take for granted a win against the Magic team that really doesn't belong on the same floor as you, I think with Tatum out, suddenly it was like, how are they going to respond? And I think that it made the victory a lot sweeter for the fans that were in the building. And you could feel all game that they were up by like 8-10 for most of the game, and this place was just buzzing the entire time.
Yeah, and Jaylen played the full first. I thought that was important. He built some real momentum there early. He scored 14 in the first half to lead the offense. Didn't turn it over a second time until late in the second, and great moments in the first half through that first quarter stretch. And then I thought the more important thing was they went up 11 with the bench out there, and that means no Jaylen, no Jayson, obviously, with him being out of this game. And it was Kristaps picking up the slack there, and he was obviously so bad in that first game. Hit a bank shot, Horford ran out onto the floor, really got pumped for him, and you knew at that point he was engaged to a level that he was going to have a big game here as well. And I think you feel much better about Jaylen's injury, and you feel much better about Porzingis coming off a bad game.
Definitely. I think there's a lot to be encouraged about as it relates to this game. And, I don't know what Tatum's long-term injury status is going to be, whether he misses a few more here. He was on the bench. I will say he was clapping as normal. I was kind of zooming in on my phone to see how his hand was. It doesn't look visibly swollen or anything like that.
So he had a wrap on it the whole game.
He had a little black wrap on it, but he was otherwise clapping. He was high-fiving people with that wrist. So it doesn't seem like it's so tender that he was like avoiding all contact. But certainly for him to not play a playoff game, he's never done that in his tenure as a Celtic. And for him to not play a playoff game, we all know that if there was a real possibility for him to play, he would have played in this game. And so that's the one question mark that emerges out of game 2. But I think you get a lot more answers than questions in the sense of like guys you weren't sure about. Pritchard, I know a lot of questions around how is he going to translate to the postseason. I think that those questions are not answered, but you get some good data points here.
We'll see what happens with Tatum going in the next game, and if you do want to go to that next game, Game Time's got your tickets. Use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase when you go over there. $109, the get-in price for Game 3 down at, I think it's called the Kia Center in Orlando. You've been there.
Kia Center.
Any tips?
I'll just say that it was all Celtics fans when I was there, and that was a game that the top 6 guys all didn't play, and the loudest applause of the night was when Tatum took the floor just to sit down on the bench, and when KP came and just waved to everybody. So I have to imagine that the Magic fans are going to come out for a playoff game.
We saw them once the KCP thing started. They got in our comments, they got in the chat a little bit.
Yeah, the Twitter ones. I didn't see them in person when I was there, so I'm curious to see what the turnout's going to be and if they're still going to feel like there's a sizable Celtics fan base, or if, in the playoffs usually that kind of subsides. So that's one thing to say. The other thing is that our media seats you have to use a ladder to get to. That's what I remember. It was kind of funny that we all had to climb on a ladder to get to our little section there. But I think it'll be a high-powered game, and I'm sure KCP's excited to be back in home because he was definitely the target of a lot of wrath here from Boston fans.
Yeah, CLNS $20 off your first purchase over there. Terms apply. So let's get to Tatum briefly here. I think it looked great with Brown in there. I think that probably was part of the calculus here is that Brown, in a full effort, could get Tatum through an off night. Maybe it's one off night, maybe it's 2 here, depending on how he continues to progress from this thing. Joe mostly avoided the questions after the game again. Before the game, they were playing up close to the time that they had to announce this that maybe something could happen there, but we never saw him come in. He never warmed up. And he didn't really arrive to the courtside until about game time there, and then you did see him, as you mentioned, with the wrap throughout the game. I saw him with a bigger wrap later in the night. He did leave the building without one. So all the data and information we have is that you usually miss a game, if anything, and then you're back from this thing and it's pain tolerance. So Wouldn't be stunning now, especially with a 2-0 cushion for them to start working him back in here, but I do wonder what that's going to look like if this was prohibitive enough for him to not play a game.
Yeah, again, I could see it going either way because I definitely didn't expect him to miss game 2, but there is a little bit of a cushion now where if they feel comfortable with how they matched up against this Magic team without him and he's still dealing with some swelling or discomfort, like maybe they just hold him out for game 3. I'm sure he's going to try to play if there's a possibility, but it didn't look like he really tried tonight. I'm sure at shoot-around he did, but tonight he never warmed up. He was never on the floor. Joe said we're going to see how he feels, but I don't think they really got to that point. So that's the big question moving forward, but I don't think we have any reason right now to think that this is something that's going to impact him in a month. Not to jump that far ahead, obviously you have to win the series, but I haven't seen anything from the doctors that have discussed this injury. It sounds like it's just painful, and it just happened the other night. But as I think long term, I think they have enough to get by in this series. Maybe if this was game 5 of the NBA Finals, we'd be talking about this is terrible timing to deal with something like this, but I think they can afford it right now.
For sure. And you got other guys stepping up here. I thought Holiday was sensational again in this one. White hit some big threes late. You mentioned Pritchard, who I thought slammed the door with that awesome and one through Carter, and then had his moments throughout this game as well. But it was really the way they handled the physicality of this one. And KCP, Horford, another storyline coming in. Horford and him smashed into each other, foul in the backcourt, and there was another tussle in this game, and it was so fitting that it was between them. I talked to Wendell Carter after, and he was like, it could have been anyone, but it could only be KCP. He's hyping up the crowd early as they're booing him. He had an awful game, so they were able to get on him in this one, but that moment early definitely galvanized them a little bit. It felt like every foul, and there were a lot in this game, and we'll get to Porzingis in a minute here as well, really charged the Celtics' energy. They were able to get out on the break. They hit most of the free throws in this game, and I thought their composure playing through, I thought an even more physical game than game 1 was pretty impressive.
Yeah, there was a lot of big moments because of that KCP situation where Al could have just said when you asked him at practice yesterday, he could have just said, that was nothing, and then this thing probably would have died down, but he felt like there was something to it. He said, yeah, it was 3 times that he went at him, and there was a little something extra, and now you have KCP responding today, and I thought KCP's response to you at shoot-around was also kind of he could have said, I really didn't mean to hurt him, but he was kind of leaning into it as well, too. So
that's how I'm going to play, and that's how I'm going to keep playing.
Yeah, everybody's kind of adding some fuel here. It's really mostly those 2 guys, because Drew Holiday, when asked about it the other night, was kind of it's just playoff basketball.
And most people are saying, yeah, it's just
But those 2 guys have it right now, and that's all that this crowd needs to feed off of it. The last time I remember a player in this situation was Caleb Martin, where he kind of became a little bit of a villain here after that hard foul against Tatum. The difference is that Caleb Martin played really well in the Garden. We all remember he's had some massive moments, and I think that he thrives off that chaos. I don't know KCP well enough. I've obviously watched him play when he was on the Nuggets especially, but it didn't that boost, that extra energy here didn't boost him today. And so that was a positive for the Celtics because he was really a non-factor offensively and almost a liability for them.
Yep, check out Prize Picks as well. Great sponsor here. Use the code CLNS over there when you play a $5 lineup to get $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. And all you got to do is pick more or less on all of the great player projections through these playoffs. You look at who the point totals are pointing toward and assists and rebounds. I like Pritchard's right now. I thought Cole Anthony was a good one coming into this game as well. And those are all interesting to look at on the app over there. And again, you'll get $50 bonus when you play your first $5 lineup over on Prize Picks. Check out LinkedIn Jobs now as well and post your first job for free over there with the code GARDEN. That's LinkedIn Jobs, code GARDEN. So let's get to the Porzingis stuff. I loved it most because it was so emblematic of this game, how they just kept getting battered and kept getting up and shooting the free throws and just keep going. You were texting me, are we going to see him again? He disappeared in the tunnel, got the stitches after he got up and shot the free throws with the big bandage on his head. He had the blood stains on the back of his head as well, and then every time he exited that tunnel, the crowd just went berserk. And I thought it was an all-time moment here, one that we're not going to forget.
He has a lot of those all-time moments. That's the problem. We might forget them because there's been like a dozen over the last season, but just the reality is, 4 stitches a couple weeks ago when you got that, you got a shot to the face, 5 stitches today. I think it's kind of a coincidence, but if there's somebody that's going to embrace it and relish it, I don't know that he would take that back. I'm sure he'd like to not have a cut in his face, but I think that overall he's happy with how things played out tonight. And everybody feeds off of it. Joe, I think, put it really nicely after the game, but he just knows how to kind of give the environment what it needs. And that's Joe speak, but it really does apply here. Like, that energizes this crowd more than anything else you could do. And now suddenly the Magic are playing in an 8-point game where this crowd is like having the time of their lives because Porzingis is feeding into it and his teammates are getting energized. When he came back in, everybody was celebrating, and it was still a game. It wasn't over by any means, and I think that's part of why he wanted to come back out there.
And it was slipping a little bit when he was out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he was eager to go check back in. He comes back in at the 8-minute mark. So literally, like, he missed 5 minutes of game action, and he was, the fact that he came back in to shoot those free throws so that he could be eligible to play with blood all over his head, it was like a quintessential Porzingis moment. And it's probably what people will remember when they think about this game. If they think about this game, I don't know if people are going to think about game 2 of the first round that much longer, but I'll think about it because this is one of my favorite games that I've covered.
Yeah, and again, they're going to continue to deal with that through the course of the series. I hope they survive it. We've already seen 2 injuries in this series, and obviously not a significant one to Porzingis here, but
both flagrant fouls too.
Yeah, and
sometimes you think about, like, I always say, like, it's the non-contact plays where you get hurt, but these two, Porzingis is fine, but those are both flagrants.
And I think of the smile when he came off. It was just like, this isn't affecting us. This isn't bothering us. We actually like this, and for Porzingis, I wrote about it coming into this game. I thought it was a perfect game with that article coming out because he said it after too. I haven't been active much. So I love doing this because there haven't been many games I've been involved in. This was just his 9th playoff game with the Celtics. Obviously he missed 12 last year. And how many has he been healthy for? 4 before this, and then just 2 to start this postseason. So he's enjoying it. He knows it could end at any moment. A weird step or anything could end that run, and I think they need him more this postseason. He's been pretty important to these 2 games, even defensively while he struggled offensively in the first one. And I don't think they have someone who can do anything close to what he does in both directions, between Al and Luke. I think they need Porzingis and what he's been able to show on both ends of the court.
And I think defensively is key, with him because he's such a good scorer and he's been that guy that can go off for 20 in any given night. His performance offensively in game 1 was pretty abysmal, 5 points on 1 of 8 shooting. And even tonight, he missed some shots that he'll normally make. And Jaylen talked about it post-game. Like, he was over 5 from 3 ultimately. Like,
but in this series, I don't worry about the percentages.
I'm not worried about the percentage either, but I think that the offense is distracted from the fact that both games defensively, he's been hugely impactful. And I thought game 1, Drew got a lot of that credit in that third quarter, as he should, but Kristaps was very active defensively in that third quarter. I think he finished that game with 4 steals.
Yep.
So the same way that we look at those guys, we look at Drew and Derek and their defensive impact. Kristaps, he has his faults as a defender, as does anybody, but he's been a really helpful rim protector for them through these 2 games, and it's a dynamic that we've seen what they look like without it. Sometimes they give up less threes. In this series, it's just a win because they're not a high 3-point shooting team, so you're just adding a layer to what they want to do, which is drive to the basket. He's making that a lot more difficult for them.
And as it turns for Orlando, and we'll both be down there covering this thing, Tatum's status, what's that going to be? Horford again said that KCP foul early was intentional. He tripped him purposely. Said it to Gary Washburn after this game, so you still have some heat there as well. And I didn't sense in that Magic locker room like they were down bad or devastated about this one, and they never went away in this game. And I don't think they're going to do it in Orlando either. This might be a sweep. This might be a Pacers-style close sweep based off what we've seen so far. They were both single-digit games, right, in the end?
No, his last game was 17 points.
Oh, yeah. It was
this
the
was
one
9.
possession game at halftime, and then, in this game, too.
But I think sometimes the final score doesn't always capture, like, the battle that it was. And we both know it was, first halves, they played them even both times. And they use those big third-quarter runs. The Celtics can be a really good third-quarter team. But I think this is going to be one of those games that every game is going to be a battle. And they say the series doesn't start till the road team wins, and I don't think the Magic are freaking out that they're down 0-2 going back home.
Paolo's been great. He's carried them. Can some other guys step up at home? That's another thing that changes in the home court swings too in these games. So I'm looking forward to it. I think the series has been awesome, and tonight certainly a classic that we're all going to remember for a bunch of different reasons here. Celtics win it 109-100. Check out Noah Dalzell's podcast tonight as well. You got Boston. Check out the KP feature as well over on CLNSmedia.com right now.
Nobody really knew what this last year and a half of Porzingis has been. Like, I think your story dove into a lot of the behind the scenes of, like, what was the actual leg surgery like? What was the illness like? Like, he's had so much weird stuff that we never really hear about. And I feel like
tonight again,
if you're curious about what's been going on, you should check out Bobby's story because it kind of does explain some of the missing things that were a little bit confusing to people.
We'll have a breakdown as well of this game in full, and then coverage in Orlando. Gonna go pack my bucket hat and all the other stuff I need for this trip, and we will see you down there tomorrow. For Noah Dalzell, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report.